What's up, guys? This is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm bringing all of you guys my updated Masked Hero deck profile for this brand new July 2015 format. So, actually, a couple of you guys actually have requested me do an update for this deck, and to be quite honest, I actually got rid of heroes previously, but again, because of the fact that some of you guys showed quite a bit of interest actually in this deck, I decided to actually just pick up the deck again, re-update it, and then just bring you a brand new list for this brand new format. So let's go right into it, starting off with the main deck, of course. Alright, so starting us off, we have our three copies of Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, of course, because she is the one that can help us search out our mask changes, as well as she can help us search out our other Elemental Hero that we do run. So, of course, we have to have three just so we can have access to this big guy right here. So, of course, three Shadow Mist. Then following her, we have our other Elemental Hero, which is two copies of Elemental Hero Bubble Man. Of course, he is here to help us get into our Masked Hero Acid, as well as to help us get into our various rank 4 plays. Now, I did feel that 3 Bubble Man was a bit too much. There were times when you would draw into multiple Bubble Mans, and in my opinion, whenever you do draw into multiple Bubble Mans, you really do have a pretty rough hand in my opinion. So I really just did not want to run 3, and so I just decided to cut one of the Bubble Mans to just have the 2 for whenever I do need him, as of course he is searchable. Moving on, we have our, I guess you could say, our Shadow Mist enablers. We have our 2 copies of Summoner Monk and then our 2 copies of Goblinberg. Now, Summoner Monk is here, of course, because we can use him to special summon our Shadow Mist from deck, so that, again, we can cohesively search out our mask changes. And then, much like Summoner Monk, we also have the Goblinbergs to special summon our Shadow Mist from hand, again, to help us search out our mask changes. Next up, for some other supporting cast monsters, we have 2 copies of Heroic Challenger Assault Halberd. Now, I have put Assault Halberd in here just to help us give a little bit more aggression to our rank 4 plays, as there are weird, awkward times when you might have to try and force Bubble Man plays, and at times it might not be the most optimal because of the fact that we again do run Summoner Monk, and the fact that sometimes Bubman might have to force you to set spell cards that you might need for your Summoner Monk plays can actually be again fairly awkward. So I wanted to have Assault Halberd in here again to just give us more access to rank 4s, as well as to help us alleviate some other awkward plays that we might ever run into. So of course we have the 2 Halberd. And then finally, we have the 1 copy of Thunder King Ryo to finish our monster lineup, just because Thunder King is still fairly good this format, as things like Clayfort, Satellar Knights, and Necroz, of course, especially Necroz, all search quite a bit. So, of course, having the Thunder King to help us shut down those matchups is really, really nice. So that will be it for our, I guess you could say, fairly small monster lineup. Moving on to our large spell lineup now, we go into the 3 copies of Mask Change, of course, because obviously this is dedicated. I will actually mention again that this is dedicated Masked Heroes. So, of course, we have to have the 3 Mask Change, again, to help us get into our various Masked Hero monsters within our extra deck. Then following that, we also have 1 copy of Mask Charge for the fact that in the grind game, we can eventually find ourselves running out of mask changes. So having the Mask Charge to help us get a straight +1 in the mid to late game is actually really, really helpful, and can actually just get you instant free Dark Laws whenever you might need it, again, whenever Mask Charge is live. So of course we have that 1. Then for the next 9 cards, we just have pretty large consistency cards to help us get our big Masked Hero Dark Law plays on our first turn. Now, we have 3 copies of A Hero Lives, 3 copies of Emergency Call, and then, of course, we have the 3 copies of Reinforcements of the Army. Now, I have decided to actually just completely maximize on almost every search spell in this deck, for the simple fact that because this is dedicated Masked Heroes, you do want your first turn to usually be a way to set up your Masked Hero Dark Law play, as, of course, Masked Hero Dark Law by himself is a 1-card win condition at times, as by himself he can shut down quite a few decks. So my main goal for this deck was to actually try and make it as consistent as possible. So I guess in order to go with that trend, I decided to put every single search card that heroes have access to in this deck at 3. Again, so we can hopefully draw into those excuse me, those specific cards that we need in order to get that Masked Hero Dark Law on our turn 1 or our opponent's turn 1. So that is again why I did decide to maximize on every single one of these search cards. Next up, we also do have the 3 copies of Upstart Goblin, again to just help us have consistency in our deck, so that again we can get our Masked Hero Dark Law out onto the board in our turn 1 or our opponent's turn 1. Next up, we also do have two copies of Forbidden Lands to help us protect our Dark Law. As again, like I said, Dark Law is very, very important, and we want to maintain our Dark Law as much as we possibly can. So I guess you could say it's sort of like Bujins in the sense that we want to sit on that one monster and try and protect it as best as we can. So we do not want our Dark Laws to get Raigeki or Dark Hold. So of course we do have the Forbidden Lands to help us avoid those big power spells and whatnot. Then, of course, for the final two spell cards, we have one copy of the Should Be Raigeki and the one copy of Book of Moon. Now, I will say that you guys have to excuse me this video for not having my Raigeki on me, as I did have my Raigeki in a different deck, but sadly it was in a different sleeve, so I kind of was lazy and didn't want to re-sleeve it. So I just kind of threw the Dark Hole in here as a filler, and I will mention that this should be a Raigeki. The Dark Hole is just a filler card as of right now. So, that will round us off for our spell lineup. Moving on to our traps, again, it's fairly standard. There's nothing too special here in the trap lineup. We start off with the three copies of Call of the Haunted because of the fact that our Shadow Mist gets its effect whenever she's special summoned. So, of course, after we have used her and sent her to the graveyard, hopefully by Mask Change, we can actually use Call of the Haunted to, again, special summon our Shadow Mist from our graveyard to, again, search even more Mask Changes so that, again, we can establish even more Dark Laws. Next up, we have the three copies of Fiendish Chain, as we want to have some sort of effect negation within the main deck. So I have opted for Fiendish Chain, again, because it has that effect negation for things like Necros of Trishula and Necros of Unicorn, but also for the fact that there are some awkward times, although it rarely does happen, when you might actually brick or draw into our extremely awkward hand. So having the Fiendish Chain in here to help us stop attacks too is also fairly nice, and again, can actually save you from taking unnecessary damage. And then, of course, finally, for our last two trap cards, we have two copies of Mirror Force, because Mirror Force plus Dark Law is basically a field-wide dimensional prison, excuse me, did I say something weird? I probably did. But yeah, Mirror Force plus Dark Law equals a field-wide dimensional prison, and that is pretty bonkers. So, of course, we have to also have the Mirror Force to help us just stop our opponent's big established boards. So that will be it for our 40 card main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we of course start off with the big man himself, the three copies of Masked Hero Darklaw. Now, I know some people only do run two, and I can completely understand why you run only two Masked Hero Darklaw, for the fact that, of course, once you usually have the one Darklaw, if you can't establish him for a prolonged period of time, you usually should win that duel. But the fact is that when your opponent knows you're playing heroes, they are going to try and either grind you out of as many mask changes in Dark Laws as they possibly can, or they're just going to try and prevent you from basically mask changing with things like emptiness and whatnot. So I really didn't want to lose games that would end up going into that grind game, so I didn't want to run two Dark Law for the fact that, again, like I said, we want to establish our Dark Laws for as long as possible. So I never wanted to be at a time when I would be without a Dark Law. Now, of course, if they do end up outing all three Dark Laws, then my opponent rightfully should win that duel, as outing three Dark Laws in one single game is a pretty big feat. So, again, I just wanted to have the three Dark Laws in here just in case, so I do not lose in that grind game. Next up, we only do run two other masked heroes, starting off with the other dark masked hero, which is the one copy of Masked Hero Anki. Now, I used to run two Anki for the fact that he actually is a fairly large beater and can actually help us put in a lot of damage. Also coupling with his effect to also search even more mask changes. But the fact is, again, I didn't run into situations where I would need two Anki that often. So I really just decided to opt for the one Anki so that I could have more rank 4s in my extra deck. And then, of course, the final Masked Hero we do run is the obligatory Masked Hero Acid to help us just destroy large back rows that our opponent might establish, and again, to just help us safely OTK our opponent, again, through those massive back row that some decks can make. So that will be it for the Masked Heroes. Moving on to the rank 4s, we start off with the one copy of Karen Gorgon. Now, I actually would want to touch on how significant this guy is, as there are some times during your first turn, if you ever have a fairly good hand of things like Goblinberg, Summoner Monk, and a spell card, I guess you could say, you actually can make the board of a Dark Law play, which usually will be the Shadow Mist on board and the Set Mask change, plus a rank 4. So I felt like Karen Gorgon was actually a fairly significant choice for this extra deck, for the fact that when you actually do make your Dark Law, you can actually have Karen Gorgon chilling by the Dark Law and just, again, give you more protection for that Dark Law so that you can keep him on board for as long as possible. So again, that is why we do run the one Karen Gorgon in this extra deck. Then we have the one copy of Heroic Champion Excalibur, again to just have that massive 4,000 Apocalypse Fort Towers out in our extra deck. Then we have the one number 103 for, again, that Clyfort matchup. The one Gagaga Cowboy for whenever we have to shoot for that last 800 life points. Then we have the Tellarknight Ptolemaeus and the one copy of Stellar Knight Constellar Diamond for that Burning Abyss and Shaddoll matchup. Then we have the Abyss Dweller for even more graveyard hate and for other decks that our Diamond might not be able to affect as good. Then we have the one Castel and the one Exciton Knight for our just staple rank 4s that are pretty good in any deck that can make rank 4s. And then finally, we do have the one copy of Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon for the fact that sometimes we will be trying to make big beaters off of Summoner Monk plays. And the fact is that you cannot make Heroic Champion Excalibur off of a Summoner Monk, obviously because Summoner Monk is a spellcaster. So it's good to also have the Dark Rebellion for those times when you, again, need to have that big beater, but only have access to that Summoner Monk play. And then, of course, like the trend has been going on, gotta show the Yusei token because he's been in pretty much all of the recent deck profiles. So, of course, yeah, we have the Yusei token to round off our 15-card extra deck. Alright guys, well I guess that will be it for my updated, dedicated Masked Hero deck profile for this brand new July 2015 format. Again, I hope you all did enjoy this profile, and of course, let me know what you guys think of this deck list down in the comment section below, as I always do check my comments, and I very much love interacting with all of you guys and talking with you guys about my card choices and whatnot. So of course, as usual, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.